we bring him in and we're giving him a new deal. So, I mean, I can kind of see, that perspective. But if you're Bill O'Brien, this guy was raised in your system. He came in, you drafted him, you brought him in. Why not make him a lifetime Texan? Yeah, give him what he wants. Give him his money. Find a way to make it work. But Bill O'Brien to me doesn't have that experience with the salary cap, and he just looks at it as a problem when a player begins to start to make too much money. I mean, what's he going to do when Deshaun Watson needs a new deal? I mean, these are hard contracts to hammer out, and I don't think Bill O'Brien's equipped to do it.
Yeah, and absolutely, and we'll see what happens. That's a whole other thing. Like I said, I'm okay with it though, from the aspect of being a Colts fan.
Yeah.
Philip Rivers jersey.
Yeah, I can't. I can't blame you there.
Philip Rivers jerseys are now on sale here in Indianapolis, so if you want to grab you a Philip Rivers jersey. Also notice that Peyton Manning Indianapolis Colts jerseys are still a high sale value on NFL.com. Just saying, people still like to buy the number 18. Let's talk about the upcoming NFL draft, which is coming very fast. And certainly we got the Bengals at number 1, expected to take Joe Burrow, but we got Miami Dolphins as well hanging out there, and they're looking to make some noise. There's talk, rumor, and discussion between the Eagles and Dolphins are expected to happen. I don't know if the Bengals will make a trade, because I think they're pretty much solid on Joe Burrow. But that trade would obviously mean that Tua would end up with the Bengals, I would think, if I would understand that correctly.
Well, I would think if they make that trade, that's what they would be counting on, is Tua. Because you figure the Dolphins would take Burrow, right, if they moved up to number 1, or would they take Justin Herbert? I mean, can you rule out Justin Herbert here? He seems to be gaining some traction, as quarterbacks always do, a couple weeks out before the draft. But who knows who they would take at number 1 if the Dolphins were able to move up and grab that. But yeah, I would think that the Bengals would make the trade knowing that, hey, we're going to have one of those two that are going to be sitting there for us, or one of the three, I should say. It'll be Burrow, Herbert, or Tua. But yeah, I mean, I could see that. And, if you're the Bengals, that might be a nice savvy move to make. You grab a couple extra picks to add to a roster that really does need help, and you still get your quarterback of the future in whoever it would be of those three quarterbacks. So, I could see that happen, and I know last year was kind of a disappointment in terms of trades in the first round. Usually we see a little bit more activity in the first round, but this draft, with the way the country is right now and the way things are, you just don't know how things are going to play out because teams are playing it a little closer to the vest. It'll be interesting to see how it works out. And, I think. Talking about Tua, I mean, here's a guy that, okay, yeah, his medicals checked out. Everybody seems okay with the medicals, the hip issue that he had. He's had a slew of other injuries, and you wonder if teams were able to bring him into their facility, if they would find more red flags that, an independent doctor isn't seeing, something that maybe a team looks for in particular. Maybe they would find issues. I mean, he, to me, is a huge risk in this draft just because of his medical history. You don't know. I mean, yeah, he's got the skill set that, teams will like. He's got the arm, he's got the mobility. But the injury thing to me is a huge red flag. And I think had teams had a more of an opportunity to look at him in person, they might have found more red flags, and you might see Tua slip a little bit. But, in a draft where there is so much uncertainty, he'll probably get picked just based on his skill set. But to me, he's a huge, huge risk. And you just worry about, that injury history and that hip issue in particular. I mean, the quarterback, his hips are very important. So is he going to be medically sound and hold up for the next 10 years? I mean, you could say that about every quarterback, but if you already have a history of injuries like he's had at Alabama, to me, it's a huge red flag, and teams are going to have to feel comfortable taking him.
Well, we kind of are glad that the NFL is still around. It's the only one that's still around. And it looks like we're going to get the season in. Not going to get MLB in. Probably not going to get NBA in unless they start sometime. There's still a window or a path for the NBA. Certainly feels like a lot's missed that we don't have baseball, and I can't help the fact that the Cardinals. It's just the rule in baseball that if there's no MLB season, that the Cardinals are automatically the World Series champion. And I know Cub fans and other people don't like that. Phillies fans don't like that, but it's just the reality of it is that.
I see
but
what
anyway,
you're doing there. Yeah.
we're missing a lot. So what do you think, if anything, will this virus and what we've been going through here recently? What effect will it have on the season? What effect will it have on the draft? And how because when this draft happens, we're still in a time of uncertainty. So a lot of this draft is just believing that their season isn't going to be the next to be chopped. And I know I saw your tweet where the president's going to have a call with all the different commissioners of all the different leagues, but because this is a huge economic impact as well to the nation. If the NFL was to, and you got to look at the TV contracts, and because they're only required to pay the games they air if they can't air any games, so that's a huge blow economically to the team. So a lot of these teams are taking big risk on drafts. At this point, it could be just a maybe. What do you think that there's going to be any major impact in the draft and in the season from this?
Well, I've heard, different things on this call that you mentioned with the commissioners today, and I've heard, I don't know how real this is, but as far as Major League Baseball goes, I've heard that there's a proposal now out there that they're going to want to open up their camps in Florida and Arizona. And Florida is just a mess right now. I don't know how you could do this, as far as the virus goes. I mean, they were kind of late to the party, and everybody's been infected down there, and it's just getting worse. So, but I've heard MLB wants to open up their training camps in Florida and Arizona and begin to play spring training games without fans, because in baseball situation, if you want to have any kind of a season, you're going to need at least 3 weeks for these players to kind of ramp up to the season. You just can't say, okay, we're going to start playing games, without fans, and day one of the season starts tomorrow. You can't do that. You need time, obviously, to build up to that point. So I think that's kind of what some of this call is going to be about today. Is Major League Baseball wants to do this, and they want to not have fans and take 3 weeks or a month with the hope that in 3 weeks to a month, everything kind of will be ready to proceed, even if it's without fans, and get some of this season in. But we'll see. I mean, that's just kind of what I've heard. I don't know, how true that is. I haven't confirmed it with anyone, but I've been told that. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And as far as the NFL draft goes, I think where you're going to see the impact, and I think this has kind of been talked about a lot already, is later in the draft, where teams have kind of done their homework on players that, are, your third day picks, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. Are they going to kind of fall through the cracks, some of these players, or a team's not going to be as accurate in their assessment of players because there's just not enough volume of work on some of these late round draft picks. And especially the undrafted guys, like usually you see players, and Rodney McLeod, the Eagles safety, was on a conference call on Friday, and he was asked about that. He was an undrafted free agent coming out of Virginia, and he's had a very good career. He's won a Super Bowl. He's 30 years old now. He's been in the league for, 8 years. But he was an undrafted kid, and he was asked about it, and he said a lot of these guys, without those pro days, he said at his pro day, a lot of teams came in to see other players, and he was just kind of working as a cornerback and a safety and playing defense against some receivers and a quarterback. And he did well enough that teams showed an interest and started talking to him and started looking at his tape. So, through that pro day, he generated interest. There are no pro days anymore. So, your athlete who might deserve a chance in the NFL, is not going to get that chance, or it's going to be harder for him to get the attention of an NFL team. So that's where I think it impacts the draft is, some of the later rounds, they're not going to really understand a lot of the players, and their board will be limited, and just because of the players they've seen or players they've studied the limited film on, guys that come from Division II schools like the safety Kyle Duggar from Lenore-Rhine, who, he's the D2 kid. How much tape is there? And it's tape against guys that are inferior competition. So you're not going to be able to see him in a workout. You're not going to bring him into your facility and put him through any kind of workout or, mental challenges that teams usually give on these visits. So it's going to impact the draft the deeper, the further the draft goes on Saturday, the third day, and then the undrafted free agents. Some of them make an impact. The Eagles had Corey Clement, the running back from Wisconsin, who went undrafted. They signed him in the undrafted period, and he ends up having a great Super Bowl and helps the team win a Super Bowl. So, these are players that could slip through the cracks, or the process for them could be more difficult to get into a camp.
We're talking with Ed Kracz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles, SI.com, and our official NFL contributor. Well, let's just run through a little mock draft as we know it now. As we talked a little bit earlier, that there might be some conversations between Miami and Cincinnati, with the hopes of picking up Tua. But I still got to believe that Joe Burrow is the perfect match there for the Bengals. He's an Ohio guy. Everybody loves him down there. He would be a great fit. So I'm going to go with number one, Joe Burrow, to the Bengals. Right now, I think that's just how it stays. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting because the Bengals still have Andy Dalton. I know they look to try to trade him. He's not going to be happy sitting on the bench. So that's a situation that arises. And, when you talk about quarterbacks, Tom, just real quick, you still have Cam Newton out there as a free agent and Jameis Winston, which to me is a huge surprise. Heading into the draft, these guys may not have jobs. So a team that doesn't get their quarterback, or maybe the team that we think is going to take a quarterback, doesn't take a quarterback because they say, we'll just go sign Cam, or we'll try and sign Jameis and, hope that he can cut down on those interceptions. So as it stands, though, I think the Bengals will take Burrow.
Well, certainly I think one of the most talented players in the NFL draft is Chase Young, and we look for the Redskins to pick him up in the number 2 pick.
Yeah, see, here again, Ron Rivera with the Redskins now, he's made some moves. I think they might surprise and go for a quarterback. I think I could see them taking Tua at number 2, and I don't think they're really sold on Haskins, the kid they took last year before Ron Rivera came in and the new regime came in. So I think they're going to surprise. I think they're going to take a quarterback, and we've seen it before. Quarterbacks go 1-2 in the draft. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. We saw it with Mariota and Winston, and we saw it with Goff and Wentz, and I think we'll see it again. I really think it's going to be Burrow and Tua go 1-2 here.
So, we look at Darius Slay going to Philadelphia and leaving the Eagles. That leaves them a big hole in the quarterback position. So you would think they would look at Jeff Akota, however you say his last name, again from Ohio State as well, going into the draft as a junior.
Yeah, but they signed Marcus Trufant, or Desmond Trufant, in free agency. That was they signed him, and the day later they traded Slay. So I think maybe they're happy there. And if Redskins don't go with Chase Young, I think the Lions will. So I'll say Chase Young to the Lions at 3.
Well, we've got time for about one more pick, because we talked about in the number 5 pick, and we'll stick with 2 there with Miami, but. Isaiah Simmons, offensive linebacker, junior out of Clemson, goes to the Giants in the number 4 pick.
Who did you say? Oh, Simmons. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think the Giants need a lineman, an offensive lineman. They're committed to Daniel Jones. They have Saquon Barkley. They need help on the offensive line. I think they're going to go with one of the linemen, probably like a. Tristan Wirfs, who I love a lot, the kid from Iowa. I think they'll go Tristan Wirfs, although who's the kid from Alabama? Jedrick Wills could go there, but I'll go with Tristan Wirfs from Iowa to the Giants at 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying something else. I apologize.
No. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Wirfs to the Giants at 4. I think they need an offensive lineman, so I think they'll grab, Wirfs out of Iowa.